Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you all to Lord Killian, a YouTuber who is most well known for his commentary series where he plays a skeleton character named Lord Killian. He primarily covers topics like science and religion, and when he does, I believe he does so incredibly well.
Heh, flattery won't stop me from sticking you to the wall!
I'm Mr. Beats, and I'm in love with the U.S. Constitution.
I don't even...
So you don't give us any introduction to who it is you're covering, and your first interjection is you being confused. Not actually making a point or criticism, just sounding confused for a couple of seconds.
I'm flabbergasted at the idea of someone being in love with a piece of paper. I can sort of understand it when Christians are like that with the Bible, or Muslims the Quran, but when it's about a government document, it's just beyond creepy. And yes, this is about all the effort he's put into understanding me here. Not a good start for a video he titled, Lord Killian Gets Beaten. But before we get any further in, I just want to mention that this video was requested by Executioner. If you'd like to suggest a video for me to debunk, go to Patreon or Subscribestar and become a supporter at the $2 level.
Also, I don't want to spend too long nitpicking his background, but why is a cartoon skeleton drinking a realistic martini? At least, I think that's a martini. Even ignoring the fact that I don't think skeletons can drink things, I know for a fact that pictures can't.
Okay, first off, it's champagne. But either way, it's ironic that you're using images from Mystery Science Theater 3000 because you seem to have forgotten their mantra. Repeat to yourself, it's just a show, I should really just relax. The Constitution is a document of universal principles.
No, it's a document that sets up a government.
Based on universal principles. It's not just throwing together a set of bylaws or something. It sets up separation of powers, limited and enumerated powers, individual rights, that sort of thing. So if you're basing it on how things are at the time, or how things change, you're doing it wrong.
Really? So there's no difference between advocating for, just to use one of your examples, the right to bear arms in the 1780s versus today?
No, there isn't. You still have the right to life. So you still have the right to defend yourself. So you still have the right to any available tool you can acquire for doing so, whether it's a knife, or a sword, or a musket, or an AK-47.
Because to give everyone an idea on just how much our technology regarding firearms has progressed in that just under quarter of a millennia...
Are you going to be comparing this to how much communication has changed? Because I think there's a huge gulf between printing out pamphlets and what you and I are doing right now. The First Amendment has changed a lot more than the Second, but again, these are about principles. The level of technology has nothing to do with it.
The first ever gun that could hold more than one bullet was the Colt Revolver, invented in 1835.
Wrong, 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 wrong! In previous videos, I've mentioned the Giordani repeating rifle, which was put into service in 1780, 12 years before the Second Amendment. It had a 20-round gravity-fed magazine and a firing rate of over 40 rounds per minute. There was also Joseph Belton's repeating flintlock, which could fire 16 shots in 20 seconds with the same reload time of a traditional musket. Congress ordered 100 of these guns in 1777. Even before then, they were all over colonial America. John Pym in 1722 showed some Indians a firearm he'd made which was loaded once, but discharged 11 times. And before that, there was the Puckle gun, invented by James Puckle in 1718. That was history's first machine gun. In fact, the first repeating firearm had actually been invented back in the 1400s. It was a German breech-loading matchlock. If you want to go up against me and say I'm beaten, you better do your research. And you didn't do your research, Pally!
I'm not even in favor of most forms of gun control. However, I do have to acknowledge that, advocating for something way back then is different than advocating for it now because we have so radically changed in that time.
No, we haven't. We're still the same humans with the same needs. Our technology has given us better ability to fulfill those needs, and that's called progress.
This is also ignoring the fact that the Bill of Rights does contain relativistic language. For example, the Third Amendment reads, "No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law." So, quartering a soldier into somebody's house without their consent is not inherently wrong. It's only wrong if it's not done during a time of war, and not done via a manner prescribed by law.
How is that relativistic? They're recognizing war as an exception that needed its own limitation. They knew the government would be doing a lot of, "Oh, well, we're at war, so times are different." They're doing it today, just like they did back then. The reason for the Third Amendment, as you'd know if you'd bothered to read the ratification debates, was because of what the British were specifically doing to the colonies. Parliament had passed the Quartering Acts requiring the colonies to provide food and housing for British troops following the French and Indian War, even though it was peacetime. These were two of the intolerable acts the colonists rebelled against. Later, during the Revolutionary War, the colonists protested the quartering of troops in their homes because it was actually illegal under Parliament's Mutiny Act. The British Army was just ignoring the law. The whole point was to make these troops subject to the civil authority, something Article 1 also does and was a big point in the Declaration of Independence. It's not relativistic! By the way, they did something right. This is the only amendment in the Bill of Rights that's never had to be litigated in court.
The Fifth Amendment reads, "No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on the presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces, or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger." Again, am I the only one who thinks that these universal principles are a tad more situation-based than Shane makes them out to be?
Yeah, I think you are. Certainly lawyers in the courts do. I'm even having trouble conceiving what your problem is. You aren't thinking a grand jury is a jury in a trial, are you? We're just talking about the initial indictment here, the formal presentation of probable cause to believe someone has committed a crime. These are generally done without the defendant even present. The exception here is for two reasons. One, the power to make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces is a separate power granted to Congress in Article 1, Section 8. Second, if you're a military branch in a foreign country or out in the middle of nowhere or on a ship at sea, it's kinda difficult to go out and rustle up a grand jury. But again, we're only talking about the process of indictment here.
Or how about the Eighth Amendment's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment? Well, wait a minute, what makes a punishment unusual? That in of itself is entirely relative.
You haven't spent 3 seconds researching the Constitution, have you? The language of this amendment comes almost verbatim from the English Bill of Rights and had over a century of jurisprudence in the interim. They knew what this meant. You don't. Let's go through the whole amendment since you didn't, but I don't want to give you any outs. Excessive bail is bail beyond what is necessary to ensure the defendant will show up for trial. Excessive fines means in relation of the ability to pay. The amount of the forfeiture must relate both to the severity of the offense and the financial effect it would have on the defendant. A cruel punishment is a punishment made not to correct or to protect the public, but out of vengeance. And an unusual punishment is one that's disproportionate to the crime.
I could go on, but I think you guys get my point.
Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, but you're mouthing off anyway.
Our founding fathers were never totally dogmatic about what they wrote down. They acknowledged that circumstances change and there could be examples where something that is perfectly okay in one situation is not okay in another.
None of that changes anything I said. In fact, it just supports it. It's still a document of principles. They just knew they wouldn't always get the principles right. But if you're denying this, you're setting yourself up to be far wronger than they ever were about anything.
But there have been some unintended consequences to making the Constitution difficult to change.
Let me guess. It doesn't let government do things that you like, right?
I don't know, Shane. Why don't we let Beat's video play out a little more and see if that is what he says?
You do know that I watch the videos all the way through first, right? That is what you just did with mine, isn't it?
There will be quite a few entries where Shane just stops to essentially roll his eyes and go, "Oh man, that's so stupid," before Beat even gets a chance to explain his reasoning.
I don't even know what you think you're trying to pull here. Beat got to explain his reasoning. He got to have that nice long video fully accessible by everyone. This is a tactic the creationists always like to pull. If you didn't include every single word in your response, they'd use it against you, even when you're only trying to keep the links down to something manageable. I wonder if he's going to pull that with this video too, even given that it's going to be something like half an hour even after I get finished editing. If my voice even holds out that long.
There are also quite a few points where he takes Beat out of context.
Lie, 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 lie! I have never once taken anyone out of context, and anyone can go back to the original video and see that. This is just desperate and pathetic ad hominem attacks. And they can also be easily coerced and manipulated.
So can every human being in all of existence.
Are you serious? Are you really saying that the possibility of manipulating independent adults is exactly the same thing as being able to coerce and manipulate smaller humans whose brains haven't stopped developing yet and who still have parents and guardians who are full authorities over their lives?
This is a total ad hominem on Shane's part.
What? How is that in any way an ad hominem? An ad hominem is when you say the argument is wrong because of some personal aspect of the person making the argument. You know, like what you just did with me! All of the functional parts of the ERA were passed over the course of about 150 years. That part from the 1970s is just the leftover part, which is really pretty meaningless.
Funny you mention this because Beat actually addresses this criticism.
No, he didn't. He lied about the history of the amendment. I corrected him.
Slightly later in this entry, in a part that, by the way, Shane completely cut out.
Another desperate ad hominem. For the same reason I'm cutting out a lot of your 22-minute idiocy, if I kept it all in, Brandolini's principle being what it is, these videos would end up being hours long. Again, we see a tactic long employed by creationists to try to win debates when they can't win by argumentation. So this guy just showed us what kind of person he is and why we shouldn't take him at all seriously. He is not being intellectually honest at all.
Just because you don't see discrimination against women now doesn't mean you won't see it in the future.
See what I mean? He has no evidence on his side, but he still gets to assert that it isn't fixed and win by default. Doesn't work that way, Effie.
Oh, and one more thing. You do see discrimination against women now.
And you see discrimination against men, too. I acknowledged all of this. But it's not the kind of thing that can be fixed with the remnants of the ERA. That was the point. Who's taking people out of context now? But yeah, I can feel my voice going, so this is gonna have to be a rare two-parter. Stay tuned, and you'll see me take down the rest of this Yahoo's video. And I warn you, he only gets worse from here. So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.